Roland Dyke.
Here.
Vice Mayor Mike Profit.
Here.
Alderman Mike Hansel.
Here.
Alderman Bobby Knight.
Here.
Alderwoman Luana Ottinger.
Here.
Alderman Steve Smith.
Here.
City Attorney Terry Hurst.
Here.
City Administrator James Fincham.
Here. We need to approve these minutes for both sessions separately. Yes. Okay. All right. We'll now have the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting from the regular session on June 9th, 2020.
I approve the minutes.
I second it.
All right, we have a motion on the board to approve the minutes of the previous meeting, regular session from June 9th, 2020. We also, it's been properly seconded. Please approve by the normal sign of aye. Aye. And all opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We have need approval of the minutes of the previous meeting of special call meeting from June 16th, 2020.
I'll make that motion to accept the special call meeting minutes.
We have a motion on the board to approve the minutes of the special call meeting from June 16th, 2020. It's been properly seconded. Please approve by the normal sign of aye. Aye. And all opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. No proclamations and a recognition of citizens by the mayor. Communications from our city administrator, Mr. James Fincham.
Thank you, Mayor. The only thing I have is just a continuing update of the COVID situation is from the city's perspective, and basically that is no change since our last meeting. We have kind of frozen everything in place due to the surge that's taken place locally in COVID cases. I think we've gotten to a point where everybody knows somebody that has been stricken with it. I know 3 or 4 people myself. We still have the ball fields closed over at the park. We have the gymnasium, the racquetball court closed at the community center. We have limited access to the swimming pool at the community center. We're allowing some aqua size, and that is it, only by being scheduled and limiting access to the number of folks that are being allowed to use it. As long as this continues to rise, we will continue to hold things in place and will not open up more. We have cut back. I've left it up to the department heads right now because we're kind of just going, since this thing started, we followed the governor's guidelines, and some things are kind of being left up to at the local level right now. So I'm letting the department heads work within their departments to figure what's best. We have limited access at the Animal Control Center, and we have limited access at the fire stations. And other than that, it's business as usual. But we are checking temperatures at the community center, at the police station, and we've seen very little foot traffic here at City Hall. We have a few that come in, but it's been very few that we've had to deal with. So we just have to play it by ear and see how it continues to go. We've been very fortunate so far. I don't want to jinx us in any way, but we've had to have some people tested, but no one has come back positive as far as city employees go at this point in time. I figure that's bound to change at some point, but hopefully we can postpone it as long as possible by continuing to be prudent and encouraging our people to be prudent in that we can't control what they do in their off time and where they go and what they do. But it's upon everyone to protect themselves, because you can't have a bodyguard to come around and tell you when to put a mask on and when to wash your hands and use hand sanitizer and those kinds of things. We just keep trying to educate and encourage our folks to protect themselves and their families, and see how far we can go with that. But until the governor's guidelines change or executive orders come down, we will continue to do what we're doing. The only change that we have coming up, and it'll be Thursday, is the new directive that came down by the state Supreme Court that directed the guidelines for courthouses. And technically we are not a courthouse, but on one Thursday a month right now we do have court, and so we are going to follow those guidelines on the days that we have court, because just to be on the safe side, we're going to consider ourselves a courthouse on the days that we have court, and we're going to follow those guidelines that were set down by the state Supreme Court for courthouses. And so that's all I got.
All right, the next item on the agenda is appointment of boards, commissions, and committees. Item A is consideration of a reappointment to the Cobb County Library Board, Mr. Pat Mason.
I make a motion to appoint Pat Mason.
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the board to, for consideration of reappointment to the Cobb County Library Board of Mr. Pat Mason. It has been properly seconded. Please approve by the normal sign of aye.
Aye.
And all opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Item B, consideration of reappointment to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, Mr. Chuck Strange.
Make a motion to reappoint him.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion on the board to approve the reappointment to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, Mr. Chuck Strange. It has been properly seconded. Will you please approve by the normal sign of aye?
Aye.
And all opposed? Motion carries. Item C, consideration of appointment to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board of Mr. J. Graham, Mr. J. Graham's term. Is it Mr. Graham the actual nominee, or?
No, sir. The
Chip Howard.
Chip Howard.
Chip Howard's who they want.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not listed on the
Mr.
agenda,
Graham.
but...
Yeah, he didn't want to be reappointed. It's my understanding. I haven't spoken with him, but that was what was passed on to me, that he no longer wanted to be on the board.
Okay, so Mr. Chip Howard is consideration of appointment to fill Mr. J. Graham's term.
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion to appoint Mr. Howery.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion on the board to appoint Mr. Chip Howard as a replacement for Mr. J. Graham on the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. It's been properly seconded. Are there questions to the motion? Hearing none, please approve by the normal sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Item D is consideration of reappointment to the Industrial Development Board, Mr. Brandon Joint.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the board for the reappointment to the Industrial Development Board of Mr. Brandon Joint. It's been properly seconded. Will please approve by the normal sign of aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Item E, consideration of reappointment to the Industrial Development Board of Mr. Mike Hansel.
I make a motion to approve Mike Hansel.
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the board to approve the reappointment to the Industrial Development Board of Alderman Mike Hansel. Any questions to the motion? If not, please approve by the normal sign of aye.
Aye.
And all opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
Thank you,
Congratulations, Mike. I
Put that
think-
on you. You asked for it.
Yeah.
All right, number 7 is reports from committees, members of council, and other officers, Tanner Preservation Alliance.
If you've been by the Tanner building, you might have noticed that there is glass in those windows now, some of them. Some of the glass that got shipped in was broken, and some of it was cut wrong, so they've had to return that to the manufacturer to replace. But electrical line is in. Once they get all the windows in, they can button the building up, turn the HVAC on, then they can lay the floor, paint the walls, and the plan is that we're going to finish the project, cut the ribbon with Walter State still needing some of their additions, but that's going to be outside the scope of the budget. So we're going to have to, or I'm going to have to approach some more private donors in hopes that we get a little bit more money. I don't know the price on that yet. What the electrician quoted us seemed higher than I would have thought. So we will seek a second opinion on that, but we're just going to go ahead, get to the finish line on this. And I've told Walter State that It's electrical, most of it, so I told them the backup, and there's electrical in those rooms, so I told them the backup plan may be that if they choose to have classes on campus, on any campus, and then on that campus in particular, that they can be in there, but there might be some, Jeremy, plug your ears, there might be some extension cords from here to there instead of where they exactly wanted everything at, but we're gonna get this part done and then focus on the other, because it would be another delay getting done if we tried to then go find money to do what Walter State did. Anyway, so that's light at the end of the tunnel on this one. We're finally getting the windows in, and we'll get the finishing.
Feel like they need to pep it up just a little bit. I go by it every day, sorty right there, and seem like they're dragging their feet.
Nobody's really dragging their feet, Coach. It's the subs are having a hard time getting people to work. So when everything shut down the way it was, and it's pretty lucrative to be unemployed right now, they're having a tougher time getting people to come back and do the work for them. So yeah, the subs are ready to go. It's just, do they have enough people to come in and get what they need done? So as soon as the glass is in the building, it should look like there's a lot more going on up there, because you'll have flooring, painters, insulation, all that stuff going on at once.
What some of them boys told me they're making hire, they should be lined up.
Yeah, we've got to pay scale because of the grant, so it's more than a typical, if your uncle grabbed you and took you to go work on a, yeah.
Trying to get a
What's your
job.
best guess on projected, maybe getting in there, just the best time?
For like getting Lucas and those guys in there, I'd give it till first, second week of August, because the windows pushed us back. I was saying middle of July, but it's middle of July now, so the windows push us back a couple weeks. But as long as we don't have another delay with the glass, which everything's backed up, the supply chain's really screwed up now because of everything, but just being hopeful that it'd be around that time, because we got to hit a deadline for Walter State anyway, if they choose to. I think their biggest thing is they've gotten their tables and everything they need to put in the classrooms. They don't really have anywhere to put it. It's just kind of taking up space over on campus, and they more than anything want to get it in the building, which I understand.
Do you have the ribbon cutting?
Yes. Yeah, it's more on this side than on this side, so you're getting my good side, but yeah, it's spreading like wildfire over here. Aging terribly.
Is the ribbon cutting the same time as we try to get partnership and everybody in there?
Say the first part of that again, Mayor.
The ribbon cutting itself?
Oh, yeah, that would just be the building's open, the partnership can start moving in, the senior group can start moving, and Walter State would be the only thing that, because the electrical drops, and one of the rooms that they're making their office and testing space needs wall partitions. So I don't think that'll be done when we're ready to cut the room. But that's all on an isolated end of the building that they wouldn't be using anyway.
Parking lot?
That'll be that'll be done once there's no more heavy machinery going in there.
Okay.
And we got to cut a water line, but we're doing that. City, I mean. Any other questions? Thanks. She'll be seeing me again in a minute.
Okay, thank you. Item 8, no old business or unfinished business. We move on to 9, new business. A is consideration of first reading of ordinance number 2020-05, amending the zoning ordinance for the City of Newport, Chapter 3, General Provisions, Section 309, Signs, Prohibited Signs, Product Sales Signs.
This is something Grant and I have been working on. This tightens up our existing sign ordinance. We didn't want to say no advertising signs on windows of commercial buildings, because then if you think about at McDonald's, if they put up the 2 for $3 burgers or whatever, it would prevent that. But more of what, think about in your head the stores that, because the vendors will pay the store a fee, or I don't really know how they work it out, but they'll have a dozen for product sale signs all over the building and all over the windows. You can't see in it. So we're trying to limit that because it hurts the aesthetic, and it probably hurts the business of a business adjacent to it, because it maybe someone doesn't feel safe walking in. I mean, usually the tobacco stores are the biggest offenders, because that's usually where your product sale ads come from. But you got the language in there if anybody's got any questions about any specifics of this, and this course is first reading. This is something we'd like to try and update some of our ordinances every month, as Regina and Grant and I have been going through some of the ones we got that maybe are a little bit outdated or are misinterpreted given their language.
Questions? Okay, thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we need a motion.
Motion to approve ordinance number 2020-05.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the board to consider the first reading of ordinance, to approve the first reading of ordinance number 2020-05, amending the zoning ordinance for the city of Newport, chapter 3, general provisions, section 309, signs prohibited and product sales signs. Okay, we need a roll call vote.
Alderman Mike Hansel,
Yes.
Alderman Bobby Knight,
Yes.
Alderwoman Luana Oninger,
Yes.
Alderman Steve Smith,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mike Profit.
Yes.
Thank you. Item B, consideration of resolution number 2020-11, adopting the revised Cobb County Hazard Mitigation Plan. EMA Director Joe Esway.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. Good to see you again, sir.
Yeah, good to see you too, Joe.
The Hazard Mitigation Plan is a document that's revised every 5 years, and it just happened to fall within my first year on the job, so I was grateful for that. Planning for that started back in July of 2019. A collection of people, administrators, first responders from Parrottsville, Newport City, and Cott County gathered on 3 separate occasions and identified hazards throughout the county that we believe could be mitigated with grant funds. There were several things that were placed on the potential list of projects to request funding for over the next 5 years. Some as simple as cutting fire breaks to burying underground power and telephone lines, basically what the collective group saw as things that could mitigate more expense down the road if a disaster was to strike Newport or Parrottsville or Cott County. So the document has been approved. It was a sound document. We received a great deal of assistance from TEMA. Michelle Klein, Caleb Lawson, and Todd Jones were instrumental in guiding us through the planning process, because, you know, this gets done every 5 years. It's not something that's a routine. So TEMA was a big partner in all of this. So the county adopted a resolution last month during the COB meeting, and I'm here to ask that the city also adopt a resolution and approve the plan. Questions?
Joe, it was about a year ago that I approached the council about the emergency activation system, and that was spoke about in that meeting, correct?
It was. That was actually the first thing that I asked about. A siren system does not fall under the definition of mitigating a disaster. That's more of a response and recovery tool, alerting people to potential danger. But I've spoken with the fire and police chiefs, as well as the sheriff, and as well as Mayor Oninger, Mayor Dykes. We've all had conversations. I do believe that there is a need for a warning system to cover all or parts of Newport City and the county, and we are going to continue to work on finding a solution to that problem. In the digital age, where folks are, you know, tied to their phone more than anything else, and alerts can pop up, I'm investigating an opportunity that might present itself, where the EMA director in Blount County was telling me about a system that they subscribe to where they can receive notifications on hazardous weather, tornadoes, things like that, and it's very timely, about as much time as sounding the alarm. Text messages can go out to everyone within the radius of the towers, so we're looking into that as well. but it still is a priority.
Thank you.
Any other questions? The copy of the resolution is in your manual. If you've had a chance to take a look at it, we will require a motion to approve this resolution.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we do have a motion on the board then to approve the resolution number 2020-11, adopting the revised Cocke County Hazard Mitigation Plan. It's been properly seconded. We're approved by the normal sign of aye.
Aye.
And all opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Item C is consideration of resolution number 2020-12, ratifying property tax rate for fiscal year 2020-21 for the city of Newport, Tennessee.
Mayor, just to explain that a little bit, we've had, as usual, we go through this every 5 years, and it always creates a little confusion. Excuse me. Every 5 years, the state reappraises property in each county, and this prior year was our year for that. And dependent on whether the estimates go up or down on the appraisals, then the property tax rate goes up or down. If the appraisals go down, the tax rate goes up. If the appraisals go up, the tax rate goes down. This number is set by the state, not by us, because by law, every time that there is an appraisal, a tax rate must be set that brings in the exact amount of money as close as possible. It's never going to be to the penny, but as close as is possible by their estimate to bring in the exact same amount of money as the old tax rate did under the old appraisal. And so the number here, the new number of 2.412 per hundred is the new tax rate set by the state. But even though they say what it is to be, we still have to ratify it here to make it official. So some folks, you know, you're supposed to pay no more taxes than you did before. And depending on how your appraisal went, you may pay a little more, you may pay a little less. I've told several people, based on my appraisal, I think I'll pay a little more because my appraisal went up quite a bit. And I've talked to several people who's had similar experiences. I've talked to some people who's went up a very small amount. So it just depends on where you fall on that scale. But this rate is not set by us. This rate is set by the state. And it is designed not to cost you any more money. Now that doesn't, again, I want to emphasize that. I don't want anybody to come back and say, well, you know, Mr. Fincham said that we wouldn't be paying any more and mine went up. Well, I can't guarantee that. I can only guarantee that according to the state, this is designed to bring in the exact same amount of money. It doesn't guarantee that each person's going to pay the exact same amount. But just to try to make that clear, because it always creates confusion every time this comes up every 5 years. And that's about as clear as I know how to explain it.
In any case, the individual citizens have the right to appeal any rate, do they not?
Well, they can't appeal the rate. They can appeal the appraisal.
Yes.
They can appeal the appraisal to the equalization board, and they've been doing that remotely. Mr. Dockery, our Parks and Rec Director, can explain that process to you if you'd like to hear it sometime, because he went through it and he was able to get his adjusted somewhat. I debated doing that, but I did not. And I know that some of you told me the same stories, that you had similar experiences. So if the property owner is not in agreement with their new appraisal number, they can appeal that to the equalization board and go before them virtually. They're not meeting, normally they meet in person, but they're meeting virtually this year and make their case. But I can tell you, in learning from what Mr. Dockery went through, it's a tough process to try to win your battle. They really put you through the ringer on it. And so, like I say, after listening to him, I chose just to let mine go. So, but everybody's got to do what they think's right. But beyond that, it is beyond our control. So, you know, some people thought when they saw this that we were increasing the tax rate. We are not. The tax rate is actually going down. But the appraisals went up, and I've explained that before when we were talking about when people were complaining about our tax rate versus some of the other surrounding cities. And I kept trying to explain that their appraisals are much higher. Their properties are appraised much higher, and a lower tax rate brings in the same amount or even possibly more money because the formula takes both equations. And so when you see the appraisals go up here, the tax rates go down. But that doesn't mean that your tax burden goes down.
Gotcha. Okay. Any questions? Okay, we do have, need a motion to approve.
Motion to,
Need a roll call.
I'll take a second.
I'm sorry, I missed the...
He made the motion, I'll take a second.
Bali, okay, all right. We have a motion on the board then to approve the resolution adopting the revised the property tax rate for fiscal year 2020-21 for the city of Newport, Tennessee. It has been properly seconded. Are there questions to the motion? Hearing none, will please approve by the normal sign of aye. Aye. And all opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Item D, consideration of opening a bank account for the State of Tennessee Direct Appropriation Grant.
Mayor, you'll recall at last meeting, we closed a bank account that was attached to a grant project. This time we're doing the opposite, or asking for you all to do the opposite, and that is to create a bank account for a grant project. We have a $180,000 grant from the state to help offset some of our losses during this pandemic. And so, as with all grant projects, they want you to create a dedicated bank account for that money to be deposited in and for you to make expenditures out of. And so we are asking your permission to open an account for that money to go into and be spent out of.
Okay, you've heard the information. We'll need a motion to approve.
I'll make that. I'll make that motion.
Now, second.
Okay, we have a motion on the board then for consideration of opening a bank account for the State of Tennessee Direct Appropriation Grant. It has been properly seconded. Are there questions to the motion? Hearing none, please approve by the normal sign of aye. Aye. And all opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Item E, consideration of hiring a firefighter for the Newport Fire Department.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah. We were asking if we can hire someone to replace the open position that we have, and the fire department, the civil service and all, they've come down and they come up with the #1 candidate is Jacob Rathbone. And with your approval to hire, he'll be starting on the 21st of this month.
I'll make the motion to approve Jacob. He's a fine kid. You said that you had more or better candidates that applied this time than usual.
This was a very, very tough decision, and we had a lot of people we were very happy with at this one. So, yeah, it seemed to be very good.
I'll tell you that.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion on the board then to approve the hiring of a firefighter for Newport Fire Department in person of Mr. Jacob Rathbone.
I'll make
Yes.
the motion.
The motion has been
You seconded it.
has been properly seconded. Will approve by the normal sign of aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you for the job you do, Jeremy.
Item F is consideration of renewal of annual contract between E911, Emergency Cobb County, and the City of Newport.
As everyone's probably aware, we contract with 911 to provide dispatch services for the city police and fire. Many years ago, we had our own dispatchers that we paid, and we did our own dispatching until we had central dispatch. Then we consolidated all the dispatching under that one umbrella. And as those dispatchers retired, we contracted with 911 to hire people, and then we reimburse them under the contract for that service. Now, all of our former dispatchers have retired and moved on. Now, all 4 positions are contracted through 911. The contract has expired. We met with representatives of 911, and due to the pandemic, we have come to an agreement to hold everything at its old levels for an additional year, and then look at trying to see about if we can look at making changes a year from now. We try to do a 3-year contract when we do these, but because of the pandemic and the uncertainty where revenue is concerned and budgetary issues that we're dealing with, and they are too up there. And so we're asking that you all approve that we continue on under the old contract for 1 more year.
On behalf of the 911 board, I just want to thank Administrator Fincham and his staff for their work and working with Nancy Hansel, our director. We did vote at our last meeting to approve this contract and submit it to you all, and we are truly appreciative of the work they did in keeping that expenditure down. Together, they've helped us all maybe save $1 for a little while.
Okay, you've heard the presentation. Need a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the board for consideration of renewal of the annual contract between E911 Emergency Cobb County and the City of Newport. It has been properly seconded. Are there questions to the motion? Hearing none, we're approved by the normal sign of aye.
Aye.
And all opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
Thank you.
G, discussion of ordinance awareness, Alderwoman Luana Ottinger.
So, coming off of, or just out of the 4th of July holiday, I received myself a lot of calls, several calls about fireworks outside of the, what the ordinance states is allowable. And in some conversations that I had with some folks who were upset or complaining or asking, do y'all not have ordinances in the city? It came to my attention that, or I discovered, I guess, that I feel like maybe people aren't really aware of the ordinances. Maybe they are, but I would rather think that they're not aware rather than just blatantly disregarding the ordinances that we have in place. And I feel like, I know that with the codes department, they're going through the ordinances, some of the older ones, and redoing them, reworking them. It might be a good time to think about an awareness campaign, especially with things that are seasonal, like the 4th of July and fireworks, like springtime and grass clippings. We discuss the ordinances in the meetings. We have our local media outlets here covering this, and they report the news the next day. People hear that one time, but I'm not sure if they're really hearing it, listening to it, or if they're really that aware of what the ordinances are. So I just think it would be a good idea to maybe reach out to our local media outlets and ask for some PSAs, maybe some interview time, maybe even do some Facebook advertising that's very inexpensive, just to help get the word out to the community. I feel like, well, for instance, I had a lady who called and was extremely upset that her neighbors were shooting fireworks outside of the allotted time. She did not want to call the police and complain on her neighbors for having fun, and I get that. I really get that. But on the flip side, she has a right to lay down in her bed at night in her home inside the city and get a good night's rest without hearing a bunch of fireworks at 2 o'clock in the morning. So I feel like if we maybe make people more aware of the ordinances, it will help people get along with their neighbors and not, have issues. So just something to think about and consider going forward.
Seemed like when we put the ordinance first time, it got worse. It's worse this year than it's ever been. Seemed like it just got them stirred up or something. And it went on for 4 or 5 days after the 4th of July. It wasn't
Nothing like fireworks on the 14th of July, right?
In my neighborhood is just right outside the city. And in my neighborhood, it went on for 3 weeks. It went on 2 weeks prior to the 4th and a week after.
usually.
For whatever reason, this year, people were wanting to blow off fireworks, brother. Certainly PSAs are great. Be tickled to do as many of them as the media would be willing to do. We do try to put that stuff on Facebook, on our webpage. We have the ordinances on there. With the grass clippings, what we've done, and it's much smaller scale problem. But last year, before we instituted the ordinance on the grass clippings, I was buried in complaints last summer about it. That's why I brought it up. And what Grant does, when we get a complaint, or when he's out and about, if he sees somebody, he stops and warns them. And so far, we've had no repeat offenders. You're kind of in the same thing on the fireworks. The police comes by and warns them. And then if they don't stop, then they're cited. And then they can't say, we didn't know. From a long career in law enforcement, I can tell you that everybody that you confront, and Mike, I guarantee, can share the same sentiment, everybody you confront about any infraction are ignorant of it. They had no idea that was against the law.
So they say.
Yeah, exactly.
We
And
call next door and tell them, and they still can't figure that out.
But now I'm all for trying to do an education program. We're glad to do what we can. But I think it's going to come down to enforcement. It does on everything like that. And the police are out moving on the 4th, and certainly they can run up on it. But if somebody's bombarding around your house, it's best to call the police and say, "Hey, will you please come up here and ask these people to tone it down? I'm trying to sleep." That's what their job is. They're glad to do it, and that's the only way you're going to put a stop to it when they're doing that. Because if they're determined to shoot off some fireworks, they're going to shoot them off till somebody comes and tells them to stop. So that's just a fact of the matter.
I've got my share of complaints too, and we may just have to look at tightening our restrictions to where it's just one night. And that's it.
Another thought that I had is, whenever these firework tent people come into town to get their permit to set up and sell their fireworks, would it be possible to maybe issue some signage to them that they could place by the cash register that not necessarily has the ordinance on it, but says fireworks are permitted from the 3rd through the 4th, from this time to this time, or whatever it is. In layman terms, just a few words that makes it really simple.
You're not going to stop them, I don't think.
I mean, we could do that. We could draw something up and tell them to post it. Now, whether or not they would post it, you all would have to make that a requirement of the permit before that would be enforceable, before we could make them post it. It would be a voluntary thing without some sort of a requirement voted on by you guys to put that in place. So,
Well, if they know what the ordinance is, why wouldn't we be able to require them to post signage?
well, there wouldn't be anything in the ordinance that would say they had to do that. I mean, even if they know it, what the ordinance is, there's nothing in there that, now Terry can correct me if I'm wrong, but if there's no wording in there that specifically directs that they have to post something, then we can't make them post it just because what the ordinance says about timeframes. It would have to be in there that anyone selling fireworks would have to post those hours. That would have to be spelled out, to be my understanding, for it to be enforceable. It would have to be spelled out in the ordinance.
Would we have to change the ordinance, or could we just put it on the permit when they come in?
Either one, I mean, you could make it, now again, I'm getting into Terry's.
Well, and understand that people buy fireworks all over East Tennessee.
Right.
And there are people who set up inside the city, but there's many more who set out in the county. We couldn't obviously require anybody outside the city limits. So I'm not sure.
Somebody had would come our way from one place to another.
And I'm certainly not disputing the issue. I know it went on because it went on in my neighborhood, and I heard folks here, the staff, talking about their neighborhoods. But I have, oddly enough, I have received no complaints.
They were all calling me.
Sorry, you told me last year.
It was my time this year.
They stay up at 2 o'clock in the morning and find out who it is.
But I have not. Last year I had a lot of complaints about it. I've had none this year other than just folks talking about it amongst ourselves here.
Well, I'm sorry, I'll not shoot it this year.
Was that you? No.
That's me.
Well,
But it is a problem. I mean, we'll do whatever, we can try to do as many PSAs as the media will do. We'll be glad to put them out there.
I guess my glass being half full, or I try to keep it half full, I just feel like awareness is the issue, not people wanting to not follow the rules,
It's both. You got it.
You're so nice, I
That will follow the rules. You got a lot that will not.
Well, the first step is calling the police. Sorry, Maurice, but that's where it needs to start.
You have comments, sir?
When we were talking about community development as a department about a year ago, I reached out to different places that had it in place. The stuff you're talking about would fall under me, and it's on my list. Now would be a good time to move it up, since one of my older woman is requesting it. Mine got that sign up real quick, so you just get something to jump at the top of the list if you ask about it in a meeting. So maybe one day I'd come by and show you the roadmap of what I got for that kind of stuff, and if you had any ideas, we can add it to that. So, and I think what you're saying isn't necessarily that if you do this, it'll stop it all, but at least it shows a good faith effort to people that we're not just saying, well, the laws are there, call the cops. We're putting something out there to say, you can tell the person that calls you that, well, we do this and this, and I'm sorry, they're still shooting off fireworks. Go bust their head, Maurice.
Thank you.
Well, we put the teeth in how lax or how tight it's going to be. So that's on us.
Okay.
It gets worse as time goes on.
This is the worst year I've seen.
It is, me too. It went on
From my personal
3 or
experience.
4 days.
They don't usually thaw on Saturday, and I think that was a big issue this year, that the 4th fell on Friday and Saturday, and Sunday was 3 big days.
Yeah, just pray for rain.
And a full moon.
That's how you do it.
Would help.
Yeah.
That was a perfect storm, 4th on the weekend with a full moon.
Oh, wow, I didn't realize full moon. Thank you, Gary, and thank y'all for listening to me.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you, Luana. Number 10 is bids, purchases, and expenses. Consideration of bids for repaving Prospect Avenue and Heritage Boulevard through STBG grant.
Yeah, the information on that's in the packet there. This is something that it's federal and state money appropriated to each community that you get for projects. Repaving was supposed to be the easiest. It would take the least amount of time. We started this in 2017, and we're just now getting to accept the bid. That shows you how fast state and federal government move. So we only had one bid, and I would recommend that we accept that one.
Any questions?
That's the only one you got.
Gary, how far up Prospect you going? Is it full length Prospect?
Yes.
I don't actually see the bid in here, but I guess, oh, there it is. I'm sorry, I see it. Yeah, we do need a motion to approve this.
Motion to approve this project.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the board to approve the bids for repaving Prospect Avenue and Heritage Boulevard through the STBG grant. We need a roll call on this one, too. We need a roll call, please, Tina.
Alderman Mike Hansel,
Yes.
Alderman Bobby Knight,
Yes.
Alderwoman Luana Armiger,
Yes.
Alderman Steve Smith,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mike Profit.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jerry. Item 11 is comments from citizens. Do we have any citizens here?
Big matter of the crowd.
Really? Hearing none, we are adjourned.